Bismillah, hello and welcome. Luke Lyons here, hope all is well. And welcome to my YouTube channel, the Lion's Den, in which we specifically talk about racial puberty. What's racial puberty? Well, let me introduce myself briefly. My name is Lucas Lyons, 33 years old, assistant principal here in the South Bronx, and ADOS, American Descendant of Slavery. And I initially had a YouTube channel some years ago called Racial Puberty because race consciousness was the number one value of me, is the number one thing on my mind. Race consciousness, I was so race conscious. And I still am. It's not number one, it's number two now. And my world has shifted, my perspective has evolved into which now my number one value is God consciousness. Alhamdulillah. God consciousness. I'm a Muslim ADOS man. And it's shifted from, I'm still talking, this channel is going to be predominantly, yes, we're going to talk about Islam, religion, we're going to talk about a few things, but the main focus of this channel is going to be racial puberty. Puberty being the growing up, the development, the evolving of one's racial consciousness. You all know what puberty is, racial puberty. Use your imagination. I want to say I got that from an Ibram X. Kendi book, even though I'm not a huge fan of his work. I did like that phrase. I did like that concept. And so that's where I got the name from. I think that's where I got the name from. I think he was the first person to use it. And it stuck. And as an educator of young people, race consciousness is so critically important. God consciousness as well, and I'm going to talk about this in a second. People have this fear about talking about God. And so Du Bois said it, the problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line. Cornel West doubles down, the problem of the 21st century is the problem of the color line. And unless you genuinely think that problem has been solved, it still is the problem of the 21st century. And I'm going to get into a lot of my history later, I'm sure, down the line. But that's just the basicness of it all. I don't want to make this video too long. I'm quite tired. It's really late at night. I got a long week ahead of me. We got state tests coming up. I got a lot of work to do. And yeah, I'm tired. So I'm not going to make this video terribly long, but I did want to post a video. Traditionally on this channel, when I do talk about racial puberty, I'm going to try to chunk it into 3 different buckets. Got my notes here. I'm going to try to get through it. We're already 3 minutes in. Let's get after it. The first thing I wanted to talk about, the first thing that was on my mind was Islam, ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery, and the Black Church. Now, racial puberty, I used to have this channel. I had a few videos getting it back started here on the Lion's Den. And it could be my algorithm, but I'm noticing more and more videos talking about theology, talking about race. I'm not sure if it's just a change of the times. I'm not sure if it's because of the YouTube channels that I frequent, but there's a lot more talk about God, generally speaking, on social media. And I consider YouTube social media. I don't use Instagram, Facebook, Snap. I don't use any of those things. But if YouTube is social media, I do use YouTube. And I'm seeing so much more of that, specifically this battle between Islam and Christianity. And I find it quite fascinating because us as Black people, ADOS, again, when I say ADOS, when we talk about Black, yes, that's race, but the lineage, American Descendants of Slavery, Black people born, Negroes, people hate when I say use that word, but you know who I'm talking about, Negroes, ADOS people, we rank religion as one of the most important values in our life, more than any other ethnic group actually in this country. And I think that's important. No, I don't think that's critically important, especially with all this talk and all this jockeying for believers, for belief, for mind space, for faith. Which side are you going to be on? And I do find that to be quite fascinating, considering that, I've been a Muslim my entire life. I just started practicing Islam. And that, we even saw this, with Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. It wasn't really a jockeying, I would say. It was more of the militancy versus the passivity. Even the Martin Luther King Jr. wasn't really that passive. In the mind frames about how to approach white supremacy, the religion was sort of in the background. And even then, the Nation of Islam, when I initially started talking to some of the black people I know when I reverted, was, being pies in the Nation of Islam. And there was, even during the civil rights movement, there was such a misunderstanding about Islam that even Malcolm X called it Mohammedism. Astaghfirullah. Called it Mohammedism when it's really Islam, which is just devotion to God. But I'm gonna find it difficult to separate the two, even though, again, the lines then we're talking about racial puberty, where it's gonna be race focus here. Being God conscious and seeing the time and energy that Allah has provided for me is gonna be nearly impossible to not talk about race as an ADOS man living in America. It's impossible. Again, the problem of the 20th century, the problem of the 21st century, our history is inseparable from racism, but it's not reducible to racism, as Cornel West would say. And that was sort of the evolution of because I love YouTube. And, when I first started to create a channel, Racial Puberty is what it was called, I was talking about solely racial things and race-conscious things, and I'm sure that's going to continue. That's what this channel is about. But being a Muslim is going to be, I don't even know how I have the words to say it, but Islam is showing me sort of why and how ADOS has gotten ourselves into the predicament that we've gotten into. And when I say gotten ourselves into, I'm not saying chattel slavery, redlining, neo-slavery was a choice. I'm not saying that. You know who said that. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is that the intertwining, the connection between the values of Islam and where ADOS is right now, where the ADOS culture is right now, is coming to a head for me. And, I thank God for, having opened my eyes at the time that he did, with as race conscious as I was and now being God conscious, because the two are so interconnected. And so when we think about the ADOS, when we think about the Black church, when we think about how devoted many ADOS people are to Christianity, to, being Baptist, to our history here. I'm actually reading this book right now. I'm doing a lot of history, research myself about, by, what's this guy's name? Albert Raboteau. Religious History of African Americans, is just one of many. And, the shirk, the paganism that we engaged in, there's really going to be only one way out of this situation that we're in, and that is Islam. I don't want to get into a huge debate right now. That's not what this video is for, but I'm just talking about the evolution about Islam and the racial puberty and how I got here, and and speaking about racial puberty, how I got here, is during the month of Ramadan last month, I found out that one of the most seminal authors that made me race conscious, because growing up didn't really even, until I got to the culture shock when I was into a PWI. It's a different story. Race consciousness wasn't on my mind at all. But what really introduced me and where I really solidified some of the concepts that I have regarding race came from 3 different authors. And I bring up the first one to say, from Allah we came, to Allah we shall return. Neely Fuller Jr. The compensatory code system concept. The compensatory code system concept. If you don't know who Neely Fuller Jr. is, pause this video and go do a little research. He has hundreds of hours of just talking about racism and white supremacy. If you don't know what racism is, white supremacy, if you don't know what it is or how it works, everything else you understand will only confuse you. If you don't know who Neely Fuller Jr. is, pause this video, go do some research. Shout out to Neely Fuller Jr. May he rest in power. Because, when I say seminal, that is where, and still who I refer to, even though he's passed, 96, passed in this past February, I still rely on his works, on his podcasts, on his frameworks, and nothing, victim guarantee qualification, nothing that he has said so far can I necessarily disagree with. One of the most poignant things that he has said, which when I talk to Black people about this, it's hard for them to, it's hard hearing at first, but the more you sit with it, the more that you let it marinate, the more that it makes sense. That minimize conflict by minimizing contact. Minimize conflict by minimizing contact. And that's just saying, Black people, we need to minimize conflict by minimizing contact. And I was just having a conversation about this with one of my colleagues, and they said, we can't play spades with each other. We can, hang out with each other. We can do whatever we want with each other. But as a Black ADOS man, between 18 and 33, the number one killer of me are other Black men. And I hate when that statistics gets brought up. I'm not bringing that up to talk about Black crime. What I'm saying is, even if it's not death, the backbiting, the gossiping, the jealousy, the envy, and the other thing, minimize conflict by minimizing contact. The other thing that Neely Fuller Jr. says is that we all carry this poison in us. We were all born and bred in the system of white supremacy. We all carry this, even though you might not be bleaching your skin, like, I won't be Black no more, even though you might not be doing that, subconsciously, we all carry some poison in us in which we, Dr. Kenneth Clark with the doll experiment spoke about this through osmosis. Black and white people, white people is a separate conversation. Black people, we carry this poison generation after generation in us. And the only thing that's going to get us past it is to be conscious of it. It's going to take a concerted, concentrated effort to overcome that racist poison that we as Negroes, people hate when I say Negroes, you know who I'm talking about though. Black people generally, but ADOS Negroes in particular, that we all carry. That's something that we're going to have to get over. And again, if you don't know what I'm talking about, victim guarantee qualification, and you're like, that, I don't know what you're talking about, like, what you talking about, poison? Yes, absolutely. And we got to be honest about it. No, it's something that we have to be honest about. And I can't bring up Neely Fuller Jr. I'm about to get to the third topic. We're already at 15 minutes. I don't want this more to be 20 minutes long. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, the ISIS papers, haven't read her work. She and Neely Fuller Jr., she had more of a psychological lens to it. Don't know who Dr. Frances Cress Welsing is. From Allah we came, to Allah we shall return. I hope she rests in power as well. Also seminal works. So I would say Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, the ISIS papers, Neely Fuller Jr., the compensatory code system concept. And Dr. Bobby Wright, the psychopathic racial personality, I don't hear people talk about Dr. Bobby Wright enough. He actually has, I don't want to say a wing, but University of Chicago, he has, I don't know if it's a section, a building named after him, but this is, this book right here is, talk about seminal. These are the three seminal authors, I would say, talking about racial puberty. This is what got me on my racial puberty journey. Real quick, I'll read this quote, which blew my mind when I read it. It is pathological for blacks, ADOS Negroes, to keep attempting to use moral suasion on a people who have no morality, where race is the variable. Now, I work with white people day in and day out, and to a certain extent, we all do rely on white people to be a sponsor, more or less, in some capacity. And when I read that years ago, over a decade ago, maybe over a decade ago, that blew my mind to think that it's pathological. To think like, do no white people have morality? Is that what I just read? Is that something that I have to live through with and throughout? And Dr. Bobby Wright, Neely Fuller says something very similar, something to consider. If a white person can be a white supremacist, meaning they're not a baby, they can functionally think, they're not senile, they can functionally think, chances are they probably are one. If a white person can functionally be a white supremacist, meaning they can think straight, that means that chances are they probably are one. This is, for me, a tough pill to swallow, considering all the white people that I know. No, but not all the white people I know. The white people that I work with, the white people that have taught me growing up, because some of the best educators I've had in my life are white. And this is something that, again, at 33 years old, I'm still, because racial puberty, I'm still working through, digesting, considering, thinking about. Race consciousness, God consciousness number 1, race consciousness number 2. And I'm not sure how people feel about that. And I mean, Dr. Umar Johnson was in a video, I think, recently saying that's our problem, is that we're too religion focused. I might get to a video about that later, but it's pathological for black people to think that white people would have morality where race is a variable. And Dr. Fuller, not Dr. Fuller, people called him Dr. Neely Fuller Jr. saying that if a white person can be a white supremacist, they probably are one. Mind-blowing stuff. Racial puberty, we're almost at 20 minutes. One of the last things I wanted to talk about, and I also make YouTube shorts called Browsing My Bookshelf. I love to read, talking about little snippets here and there from some books that I find interesting. There was this one book that I had a recent short about called Black Power in Palestine. And I didn't realize just how intertwined the black struggle was in America was to Palestine, and how the Palestinian struggle was related to the ADOS struggle here, especially during the civil rights era. And I bring this up, this is the last piece I'm going to talk about. I bring this up because I hear some black pundits, some independent media, black media, the new black media networks, talking about, ADOS, you might hear people, the FBA, Foundational Black Negroes, should be sort of isolationists in the fact that we owe reparations, number 1. I'll stand on it. God consciousness number 1, race consciousness number 2. We owe reparations. And this talk about where the money gonna come from, the funds, and isolationists, why are we giving billions of money to Ukraine in this proxy war with Russia? Talk about it, right? Why are we giving millions, billions of dollars to all these satellites that we have, the military bases with the satellite wars that we have around the world. I bring up Ukraine and Russia because that's one of the biggest things in the headlines right now. The other biggest thing, I think the more prominent thing is, why are we giving billions of dollars to Israel? And I'm not sure how the algorithm works. I'm not sure if it's going to get buried because I'm talking negatively about Israel. It might, and I'll tell you why in a second. But why are we giving billions of dollars to Israel to commit genocide? And even without the social media back then, the civil rights freedom fighters, when we were writing about the wars in Palestine, they were talking about how it was just morally wrong to be stealing land, to be going against Resolution 242, and which, by international law, because Israel violates international law every other day. Look up Norman Finkelstein. Shout out to Norman Finkelstein. And this is just a couple of quick things that I learned through this book that I didn't really know. First of all, our struggles, the ADOS, the Negro struggle, and Palestinians were so tied, so woven together that the guerrilla fighters over there were using code names such, let me see what exactly it says. They were using code names like, Palestinian activists who came to the United States in the late 1960s related that Palestinian guerrillas sometimes use code names like Malcolm X, Stokely Carmichael, Black Panther. Like Black Power had spread, ADOS Black Power had spread to the Middle East. And just to a little bit more about the connection is that the Israel Council in Atlanta advised Israeli embassy in Washington that the time was not right for Israel to agree with the civil rights struggle. It was explained Israeli officials were trying to cultivate relations with Southerners. They didn't even want Martin Luther King Jr. to visit Israel because they were trying to cultivate relationships with Southerners, the white majority South. Even though they saw what was happening, even though Martin Luther King Jr. was telling them what was happening, they were seeing what was happening. They said, no, the time's not right. We need to gain America's trust by getting the white majority with us. So we can't move the South. And so for them to dismiss Martin Luther King Jr. because he was too controversial, no wonder why Black people and Palestinians had so much in common. Not only that, something else that I found quite interesting is much of, when you talk about SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, when you talk about the NAACP, many of our funds we were funded by Jewish philanthropists, Jewish philanthropists. And when we would speak up against Israel, let me see if I have it right here. Yeah, when we would speak up against Israel, the issue would be that anyone who speaks against Israel must expect a certain isolation from the press, even it's all white controlled and so forth. Some type of isolation from the press, some type of minusing of funds from these Black, highly recommend it. And I'm not going to get conspiratorial, even though conspiracy is not necessarily a negative thing. I'm not talking about the Jewish control of certain things, but during the civil rights era, it was even stated by the various civil rights movements to don't say nothing against Israel, because the Jewish controlled press, the Jewish philanthropists are going, even though we are speaking truth, are going to hurt our organization. Same thing happening today? Possibly. Norman Finkelstein, please look him up, uses the phrase Jewish supremacy. I'm not even going to mention, I am going to mention him, Kanye West, even though he's in a lot of hot water right now. Lord have mercy. Norman Finkelstein, I mentioned Kanye West because Kanye has also said things about Jewish supremacy, just albeit in the most heinous ways. But Norman Finkelstein uses Jewish supremacy, which is why I'm using the word Jewish supremacy, which we saw Jewish supremacy affecting the civil rights movement and black organizations. And Norman Finkelstein makes the argument, who's the foremost prominent scholar on Israel and the Israel-Palestinian conflict. And Norman Finkelstein uses that phrase to describe what's happening today and why the U.S. is capitulating to the genocide that we see, that we're funding in the Middle East right now. So if he uses it, I'm going to use the word Jewish supremacy. And that's exactly what's happening. And I'm noticing a pattern from the 1960s even into the 2020s today. And yeah, we should be isolationist to a certain degree. And we also have to be, we can't be ahistorical about certain aspects. So when I hear things about, you know, Palestinian ain't our problem, Palestine is not our problem. Actually, it is when you think about the international lens, when you think about our connection with Palestinians, when you think about Black power in Palestine, when you think about the general fight for freedom, when you think about the funds that our tax money is going towards, absolutely has everything to do with us. Absolutely. So, yeah, racial puberty 1 down. Those are the 3 things I wanted to discuss. I hope this is not going to be the first and only video in the next months. I do want to get on a consistent schedule, making YouTube videos, because racial puberty is important for everyone. God bless, good night, and remember, the future belongs to those who prepare for it today.